we're going to get started right at 9 because we have so many people here, and maybe we'll have more later because of the time difference. Some people may be running a little late today, but we're so glad that Bill led the class last week, and then we got to some discussion of the 8 different ways of evangelism. And hello, Naomi, good to see you. Glad you're here again. That's wonderful.
From Georgia.
From Georgia.
My
Yes.
How did you find this?
How did you find us? Can you tell us?
So I was Googling progressive like Christian online things. And I think I'm trying to remember because I looked through a lot of stuff, so I can't remember if there's a website that listed you guys or if you just showed up on Google. But it was definitely something related to Google, whether it's a list or I just saw it and was like, hey, that works with my time frame.
Well, great. Yeah, it's 3 hours easier for you than for us. Well, we're so glad that you're very relevant.
Because you turned the video on. No, I didn't touch it.
It's very relevant to what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
So what I want to do is we're going to today, instead of having a video, we've got some interviews, and I, being the professional interviewer that I am, decided that I would interview 2 of our members, and then we can open it up for discussion because we all have stories about evangelism and what that word evokes for us and what experiences that we've had. And so I wanted to start with Marianne Woodruff. And good morning. I'm so glad you're here. So
who all is there?
you're a member of the LGBTQI community.
Everson and Lyn.
And a lot of people left the church.
Marianne Woodruff. Okay.
And a lot of people in the community left the church, and you didn't. You're still here, although you switched churches midstream. And I just want to hear a little bit about your story about that.
Well, I think I've been a church person my whole life. I've been thinking about it for this. I think it's heredity in some ways. My father's father was a Methodist minister. His mother had been a missionary before they even met and got married. So, I attribute both my sisters and my interest in church to the grandparents. They moved around a lot. You know, he had a church. My father once said that all the way from first grade all the way through high school, there was only one school he attended for 2 years because they moved Methodist parsons around all the time. My mother grew up on a farm in Lower Delaware, and they went to church Wednesday night and Sunday night. And I think they decided by the time they got married, they had had about all the church that they needed to have, you know. So they always belonged to a church, but they never were very active. But my sister and I were. I can remember in high school being at a youth retreat up in the Thousand Islands. I grew up in Rochester, New York. So I was sitting on this rock on an island in the middle of the St. Lawrence River. And I just had this thing wash over me. And I mean, as far as I know, that's the only, you know, kind of odd, maybe not the only, but I mean, it was something that confirmed to me that I was in the right place and that, you know, God was right here. So everywhere that my former husband Bob and I moved, we found a church. And because we found a church, we found friends. When we moved here in '73, we joined Mershtown Presbyterian Church. And 4 of the other couples who joined the same time we did have become lifelong friends, as many people. So fast forward to '73, and it was in '93 when I met Mary Dispenza. And it wasn't very long before I decided that I was in love and also in big trouble, because, you know, this had never occurred to me. And it was a dilemma. And that was '93 I met her, but it wasn't until '98, 3 years, 5 years, that I could actually say a full-hearted yes to her. And most of that was because of the church. Partly it was my own homophobia. Really? And part of it was the church. Yeah, I mean, like, what the heck, how did this happen? How could I possibly, but how could I not possibly, blah, 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 back and forth. And then Bob and I worked in a lovely way, I should say, to a very divorce, which included a ritual of forgiveness. And I still, and it was hard for me to continue at that church because we had sold our house, I moved to another house. And it was hard because I didn't know quite where I was and I didn't know quite where the church was. As an elder, I'd always voted, if I had a chance, at a presbytery meeting to support the ordination of LGBT people. But now I was talking about myself. It was just a very difficult time. I left the church. I went to St. Mark's. Why? Because first of all, it's a very nice church. And second of all, the rector was gay. And there was another minister on staff that was also gay. He felt very welcoming. But it was a long way from home, And finally, Carol Kelly, who was the church secretary at Mercer Island, said, come to Newport. You'll fit in just fine here. And I came to Newport, and this was, Gary Schwab was the pastor, and this was when Janine and Bob Hill were very involved in our church. They had a gay son, and they were pushing like Messi to get our church to go on the map as supporting gay people. And Gary was very supportive. And at the same time, knowing that there were others in the church who wouldn't be at that time, he wasn't really willing to push. And so they had this committee. Janine and Bob had set this committee up, and there were a lot of people, if I could remember all the names, that you would recognize. Penny and John Grove, Stick and Me. So, in fact, Mary came at that time. Whenever the committee was meeting, she came. So we went to the committee. Finally, Mary said, I can't do this anymore. If you can't find your way to yourself, you're never going to find me. So I holed up in my little house. This was January of 1998. And I opened my computer and I started a dialogue with God. And you can laugh. I mean, you could say this was all inside me, and I know that's true, but I threw all these questions. Can I love myself? Can I love myself as I am? Whatever I am is. Do I believe that God loves me? Did God create me? What does God have in mind for my life? How will I reconcile myself with my anger to God? I threw all these questions in, and I put two columns. One Marianne, one God, and then I sat there and waited until something that seemed certainly not my voice came through, and I typed, God, of course I love you. I've loved you from the moment you were conceived, even before that. How could you doubt my love for you? I'm just write one more. Trembling at the audacity of this, I continued, me, God, I'm so confused. I don't even know what I think about you these days. Are you the God of original blessing or the God of judgment? God, I am neither, simply, and both, obviously. I am bigger than any person's ability to fence me in with descriptions. And I went on and on and on until one day I was out walking, and I was on the east side of Mercer Island, and I walked up to where the I-90 goes across, and I looked up there, and there was Mount Baker right there, glistening in the sun. And I took a deep breath and I said, hi, Mount Baker, I'm gay. And then I expected the mountain to just erupt. And my heart was in my mouth, and there stood Mount Baker, just glistening in the sunshine. So I tried again. I said, Mount Baker, I think I'm a lesbian. And you know what? Mount Baker didn't seem to care. But so with that's what turned me. I have no idea, but I of course stayed in Newport. I've loved Newport with all my heart ever since, and the welcome that I felt from the very first time I came in the door really helped me a lot. So I've always been a church person, and I still am, and will till the day I die.
Wow,
Amen.
what a story. By the way, this book is called The Last of the Good Girls. Woodruff, and she wrote her own story, which
Well, I
is
didn't bring
very
it for
brave.
blood, but I did want to read you just that.
So, I'm sure you have friends who are not church members, whether they're in the LGBTQ community or otherwise. And so how do you talk to them about Christianity? And have you ever gotten into those kind of conversations? I mean, they say, whoa, I'm not coming in near the church. What do you say?
Well, I know a lot of people who feel that I'm not going near a church.
Mhm.
And so I don't say too much. I really don't. I have had two friends, not in the LGBTQ community, who have said, I'm interested in church again. And I say right away, oh, you should come to our church. We have this wonderful new minister and she's really great. And oh, by the way, she's graduated from Princeton Seminary. Princeton always gives people the,
It's a different person, but.
and she, I know, but then, and she's married to a woman who she also met in seminary, and she's absolutely fabulous. And both of those women have come to church on the recommendation to come and hear Callie. One's been here twice.
Say hello to anybody you don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
And-
trying.
And after being here, actually one before, there was a group of us gathered around a table because she had asked for support. She had to lose like maybe 40 pounds in order to get ready for a knee surgery. And while we were going around saying what we thought we could bring to the table, she looked at me and she said, I asked for you, Mary Ann, because you have a spiritual quality that I'm lacking.
Oh,
And so for a year, we met, well, at least once a month, in person. And we talked about spirituality, and I introduced her to Marcus Borg's book, and she read, and she's always been a church person too, but she's not done anything with it lately.
one of the things you told me when we were talking before was that Marcus Borg is one reason that you're still in the church.
Absolutely, absolutely. The theology and meeting Jesus again for the first time, that's a Jesus that I can follow wholeheartedly. And it's not hocus pocus. Yeah.
So when people say the word evangelism, does it make you cringe?
Well, it does, because I think, the first thought we have about evangelism is that you've got to be out there talking about it, And I think evangelism is much more what one does than what one says. Sharon, you quoted, I think it was Francis of Assisi last week when you said, preach the gospel and if necessary, preach the gospel at all times, and if necessary, use words. And I have another friend who's a very capital E evangelical Christian.
There's somebody who wants to talk.
Oh, okay.
Who said, be the Bible, you might be the Bible your grandchildren, the only Bible your grandchildren will read.
I love that one.
And
too.
so that's the one that sticks with me. I mean, I don't think of it as oops, the grandchildren are here, I better shape up my act.
Naomi raised her hand.
Oh, Naomi, did you have it? Oh, you're just,
Oh, I thought she did.
some of those resonate with you, the story? Just want to listen, okay? Yeah, great. Naomi from Georgia, she just found us on the internet somehow. Didn't know anybody here and is just listening. That's great. We're so glad you're here. So evangelism basically the
And they're in person now.
yeah. Sharon, did you want to elaborate on what you were saying of Francis of Assisi?
No, except I didn't know that came from St. Francis of Assisi.
I looked it up.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think it's wonderful. I think it's just a wonderful phrase.
So more as an example than necessarily talking to people, unless they're interested or they want to,
Yeah,
they're looking
if
for a church.
anybody asks, I'm happy to talk about my faith. I don't shy away from that, but I don't lead with it.
So tell me how many people are there in person now?
You're unmuted. Yeah, there we go. So I wanted to go to Lynn and ask Lynn some questions. Lynn Lambert is here as well. And one of the things that amazes me about you is how many people you've reached out to of other faiths and gotten, not just reached out to, but become good friends with. And so, how does your own, well, first of all, how does your Christian faith change because of meeting all of these people?
My Christian faith has deepened, I think, and my enthusiasm for following Jesus has deepened because of the connections I've made beyond the church. This,
Can you all hear her? I'm sorry.
I, Sharon,
Okay.
I had a Jesus come to me moment in 1996. So I had grown up in a Christian church. My parents were from England and belonged to the Anglican church, and so we went to the Anglican church, and I fully enjoyed it, embraced it. It was a big part of my life as a kid growing up. So I just thought Christianity was the way. And in 1996, I met Jihad Rahim. In the 1960s, I lived on the south side of Chicago. And when I was there, I was told, watch out for the black Muslims because they think you're a demon. And their headquarters was on the south side of Chicago. Now, I didn't know, I couldn't recognize black Muslims, so I didn't know. But I was concerned about running into a black Muslim who might think I was a demon. So that was my introduction to Islam.
Wow.
And that's all I knew about Islam. And then we moved to the Seattle area. And in 1996, I was kind of on my own, and our house was needing repairs. And a friend said, well, there's an agency you can call, and they'll give you the names of 3 contractors, and you can interview them. And so I got 3 names of contractors, and I interviewed them, and one of them was Jihad Rahim. And I thought, I don't know anything about Islam, but that sounds like a Muslim name to me. And, but I called the 3 contractors, and I wondered if he's black Muslim. And he sort of sounded like an African American on the phone, but he sounded very nice. So I interviewed the 3 of them, and I really liked Jihad's presentation, and so I hired him. And he came, and he was a very energetic worker. The job seemed to be a bit beyond him. It was going to take him longer than he thought, and he thought he needed a friend to come and help him, and that was fine. And his friend's name was Moses, and I thought, boy, this is really good.
Jihad and Moses and Lyn. Here we are.
After Jihad had been working around for a while, and I think we both felt comfortable with each other, and I thought, normally you're not supposed to discuss religion with people, but I know I'm going to ask Jihad about Islam.
Okay, how many else would have asked Jihad about his faith? Here's Lyn.
Yeah, so I said to him, I don't know anything about Islam, but I think from your name, I think you must be associated with Islam, because I knew Jihad was an Islamic term. And he said, I said, yes, all I know about Islam is living on the south side of Chicago.
You told him this?
Yeah. And I said,
I'm supposed to be afraid of you.
right. I had been warned about black Muslims because they think I'm a demon. And I wondered, if you might be a black Muslim. And he said, I was one.
Was.
Yeah. And he said, and he said, at that time, you were right to be concerned. And so he said he had been raised in a Christian family, but he didn't get the self-discipline that he needed there. And he also had told me he grew up in South Central LA, and I knew about the riots that were there, and I thought, wow, he may have been in the middle of those. And so he said that he found the self-discipline he needed in the black Muslim.
Oh.
And so then he said, though, but later he felt that was too constraining. It wasn't loving enough. And he found true Islam.
Oh.
And he said it had changed his life so much And he explained to me why he had really taken to Islam. And wow, that's pretty amazing. He was,
So he's evangelizing to you.
he was, yeah. And he was such a fine person. And here he was, a black Muslim carpenter. And I was sure I saw Jesus. I was sure. So that was when Jesus comes to me in a moment. And then after a while.
I'm curious, was jihad his original name?
No, thank you
Because
for asking.
we were all kind of, the word jihad kind of means.
Right.
Means
He
what?
said he took-
Means battle, right?
Right.
A
He
warrior.
Jihad said he took that name when he became a Muslim because it means struggle for God. And he said his whole life has been a struggle for God. And
That's not the way we were taught, jihad,
Right,
meaning,
no,
the meaning
it's
we were
the-
taught.
it's the greater jihad. That's the real jihad. It's the one, the internal struggle, personal struggle for God. And he was so sincere about it and all. And then after a while, he had some work to finish up at the house, and he said he wanted to bring his wife to meet me.
Oh,
And so he brought her, Linda, and we sat and we visited, and she was just lovely. And I said, "Are you Muslim too?" And she said, "Yes, I am. But my kids are Christian, and I make sure they're good Christians." Wow. You know, and from the conversation we had, I thought, if anybody can make good Christians, it's Glinda. And she just had a way about her and her concerns about the world and the troubles that kids were having today. And she would raise good Christians, I knew. Anyway, that was my introduction to Islam. That was in 1996, before 9/11. So 9/11 happened, and oh, jihad, what must it be like to have that name now? And I worried about him, and I tried to contact him, and none of the numbers I had worked, couldn't get to him. And I sent him a letter, came back. I never saw jihad again.
oh.
I still haven't. And I wonder so much about him, and I hope he's done fine. But anyway, after 9/11, I thought, boy, I've been hearing an awful lot about Islam on the media, and none of it fits jihad. And none of it fits Glenda. So I know there's more to Islam than I'm hearing on the news. And so I've got to learn more about Islam. How am I going to do that? And then there was a little notice in the newspaper that the mosque on the east side was having an open house. Well, I suppose I can learn something about Islam there. I'll go to the open house. So I went to the open house.
How many of us went to the open house? Not too many. But we did.
I've been,
Oh, you have?
Yeah. And it was a wonderful experience. It was, everybody was so welcoming. And there I met Farida.
yes.
Some of us know Farida.
Everybody knows
Farida
Farida.
Farida seemed to be in charge of the open house. At least as far as as the women were concerned. The men were all downstairs, we women were upstairs, so I was with Farida. And Farida and I visited, and she said, "We have to do more of this." And then she said, "But we can't do it at the mosque because the men and women can't be together." So she said, "We could meet somewhere like the library, and you could put a notice in the newspaper." Now, I don't know what we're doing here.
What are we doing?
Right. Well, Farida was way ahead of me, but anyway, what she had in mind was getting people from different faiths together. And she thought it'd be better to do it not at the mosque. So we went to the library. Well, and I put the notice in the newspaper, and people came. And out of that, we started the interfaith fairs. And we had them annually for 6 years. And they were wonderful. And that first interfaith fair, I met people from all kinds of faith and wisdom traditions. It was marvelous. And we all got along so well. And I met people from traditions I really didn't know anything about. And it just opened my heart and my mind, these people, and they were all lovely, no matter where they were coming from. And we had people from the Theosophical Society, we had some Wiccans, we had sick community people, and everybody just pitched in and did such a good job. Those fairs were really exciting. And anyway, that gave me an idea that, well, I don't know, it just prompted me to. But I was also listening to conservative Christian radio preachers, and some of them were really antagonizing me, and one in particular. And so I contacted him a few times because he was saying things about Islam that I knew were not true, and I thought they were dangerous. And so I contacted him, and he was nice enough. I wrote him letters, and he was nice enough to write me back. And every now and then we would talk. And I went up to his church a few times, and I talked with him. And well, and I, of course, had invited him to the interfaith fairs. And he said to me, "You have no business going to anything like that." He said, "The only reason you go to anything like that is to bring the people to Jesus." And so he would never come, but every year I sent him notice about the fair, inviting him to come. And I sent notices to a number of Christian communities that would never come. But we had all kinds of other good people who came. And so I learned so much. And some people would say, you know, it's hard to talk to people of other faiths. But a verse from the Bible has helped me there. It's one of my favorites. It's the whatever verse. And it's, and when I go into an area where I don't know anyone, I look for the whatever things. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely. If there's anything praiseworthy, anything of good report, think on those things. And the God of peace will be with you.
Wow, wow. Where is that from?
Philippians
Philippians?
4:8, I think it is.
Lynn can quote more stuff.
I say no.
No.
She never even went to seminary.
That verse really struck me, and then I have my little whatever pin, whatever, and I found that on my parents' table at the old Evangel bookstore.
Clearance table, nobody else had bought it. And it's
No.
got the rainbow colors too.
It does, and I found this years ago before we got a rainbow thing.
Yeah.
Years ago at the Evangel bookstore. And yeah, it's gone now.
I know.
Yeah.
I used to go there.
Me too, yeah. So anyway, when I think of those things, and pretty well everywhere you go, you can find something noble, just, pure, lovely, and you think of that, you know, even if you're afraid. And committing jihad, you know, I definitely saw the pure, the lovely, the just in him. You know, even though I was a little afraid meeting him, you know, I don't know what he thinks of me.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So I'm curious how your own Christian faith changed in the course of all these interactions. When you look back at yourself pre-jihad and what your beliefs were, and then look at your beliefs today, how have they changed?
Well, I think that I have realized that Jesus appreciated many of the people that religious leaders of his day condemned. He saw the good in it. Like, he went around telling the Good Samaritan story.
Yeah.
I can go around telling good Muslim stories.
Yeah.
And I can do that because that's what Jesus did. And I have met so many Muslims that are so Christ-like that they make me want to be a better Christian because Jesus would be more at home with that group than with some of our Christian groups. You know, so you know, I think it all has made me want to be a better Christian and appreciate the Christ that I find in people who don't profess to be Christians.
And of those who do profess to be Christian, the big E, evangelicals, and you had also, in addition to talking to people about their faiths, had continuing conversations with some of these conservative Christian leaders. And you've actually engaged with them, as you said. Can you tell us about that and how,
Well, yeah.
what's happened when you reached out to these people and said, this is how I see Christianity. I don't see it the same way. How do they react to you?
Some of them really, they get very tense. And there's one that I, in a big church, a lot of the evangelical preachers have big congregations. And so it was one where I went a couple times because he also was on the radio and he'd say things that troubled me and I'd question. And I remember one time there was another group that was having a workshop at his church. And I was going to go to that workshop. So I went to the workshop one morning and then I saw the pastor in the lobby and I said, oh, I said, Pastor Jerry, I have a question for you. He just tensed up. So,
Did he recognize you or?
Yeah.
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
They all recognize her.
He tensed up. And I said, can you tell me where the cafeteria is?
Oh.
And he relaxed. But I had one time, the first time I think when I went to meet him in the church and around, they have the pictures of all the staff. And they were all men. And I said, where are the women? And he tensed up.
Yeah.
What did you say?
He just tensed up.
Oh.
He didn't really answer the question. It wasn't a sure.
But one of the pastors has been very friendly to me, but I haven't seen him for several years because he has retired now. And his son-in-law now runs his church.
Did he try to convert you to his version of Christianity?
Well, he was most insistent that Jesus was the only way.
Mhm.
And you shouldn't get involved with those other groups. I guess perhaps.
The only way to
demonize it.
Right. And, I'm going to be going to another workshop in April. The Antioch Bible Church has workshops annually, and I've been to those a number of years, and I enjoy them very much. They bring in speakers from around the country, and they're pretty powerful speakers, but it's kind of fun to go to. You sit in a huge sanctuary, and many people there, and I question a lot, but
What kinds of questions do you ask? Stand up and ask questions in front of
Well,
all these people?
I haven't in the big group. I haven't, but sometimes even they have smaller groups here. The speakers will have smaller workshops and I will question them. Yeah.
How do you question with an open heart?
Well, I just say what's on my mind. And there's one speaker who has come every year that I've been there. He's now a professor emeritus from Talbot, I think it is, seminary. And he exchanges ideas with me very pleasantly, and I enjoy him. He's very bright. He's a philosophy professor. And I'm looking forward to seeing him again this year.
Great. So exchanging ideas in a pleasant way, that's usually not
No,
what
and
Christians do with each other.
no, and I'm noticing a change because at all these workshops for the years that I've been there, all the speakers have been men. But last year, my favorite speaker brought a co-author of a book that he had written, and she and he were speakers at
So there was a female speaker.
right. And this year they're going to have another woman speaker. So I just see changes happening. I'm really pleased about. Well, and I always have trouble registering for these workshops. And so
You right, Lynn Lambert, they turn you
oh,
down.
no, it's the computer gives me trouble. So
Oh,
I
okay.
get everything on the go down, but I never get my ticket.
Oh,
And then I call the office of the church and then a really nice lady takes care of me. So she knows me now. Every year it happens, happened again this year.
so you're not afraid of evangelism?
No.
How do you react to that word? It doesn't strike fear in your heart?
Well, no, I've always thought that evangelism was spreading the good news. My good news may not be the same as their good news. Their good news is Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior. And you've been saved by his blood. And my good news is, but Jesus asked God to send the Holy Spirit to be our guide, counselor, and comforter. And that Holy Spirit is so ubiquitous. You find it everywhere. It's so powerful that it can't be contained with any one religion. We can't claim that it's ours. It's everywhere. And you look for the fruit of the Holy Spirit, which is delineated very nicely in Scripture. And you know you're there. And that, to me, is the good news. It's everywhere, and you've got it, and I've got it. you know, Muslims have got it, and the Wiccans have got it too, you know, wherever there's the love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, all those good fruits. And that to me is the good news. And I think Jesus, in a sense, passed the baton on to the Holy Spirit. And yet, because we're so involved in scripture, we think Jesus is the only way. I am the way, the life, and the truth. And no one comes to the Father but by me. And I don't think that Jesus really said that. I think something got lost in the translation there.
Yeah.
And I think if Jesus could have read the New Testament, he'd say, oh, we shouldn't have read it.
Edit that part out.
Yeah.
He tossed a whole lot of it, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway,
Wow.
yeah, but I have really enjoyed people that I've met since I met Jihad. And I thank him for that. He opened up my life. And, you know, I would have stayed in my little box, happily believing the way I believed, and I still believe the way I believed, only I believe a few other things too.
It broadened your faith.
Yeah, it did, and it did.
Ethan has a comment, and I just wanted to open it for anybody to comment now, because I would love to have a discussion.
I would just say, being in this church now over 35 years, and Miss Lynn, in my own estimation of anybody that didn't have to say, you've got to come to Jesus before you get here. And I didn't even have a name, Jihad, but Ethan's close enough. She went out of her way to talk about different things, and I think there
With
is
you, one-on-one?
one-on-one, and I think there's so many things that, you know, they'll know us by our love through our actions. And this is where Lynn is really a reflection of not, you know, with her standing on the corner in downtown Bellevue with other advocates of justice. Yeah, it wasn't having to have a bullhorn, you've got to come to Jesus in order to, you know, protest. I think this is something that was really special for all of us in the example of just accepting whoever you might meet, and you don't have judgment because they're a different color, a different religion. It's something, how do we get this instilled in our kids? It's setting an example to our own kids, a neighbor, through our actions. And Lynn is a really a tremendous example for Newport, because I came to this church with a big E, with my upbringing. And I think the beauty of being able to go into a class, if it was an A's class of past, Tori, we could sit there and listen with different political opinions, but we accepted each other for who we were. And I think just to have these testimonies today of where these women have become an example, working through struggles, and they did it by accepting, even though if it was the church that let them down, it was something, hey, I'm going to persevere and go forward. So I say the Lord and the Spirit is the greatest example here of these two people right today.
Wow.
That's very nice. I'd just like to say, talking about evangelism, Jihad said to me one day, he said, I have a little card I want to bring. And he kept forgetting to bring the little card. And I thought, well, I wonder what the little card is. I imagine it's maybe a quotation from the Quran or from Muhammad. And he finally brought the little card. And it was a quotation from Proverbs.
No.
And it said, a friend loves at all times. And then you turn it over and it said, a friend is one who knows who you are, understands where you've been, accepts what you've become, and still gently invites you to grow.
Wow.
And I treasure that thought. And I think that was Jihad evangelizing me with a quotation from our scriptures.
Our joint scriptures.
That's right. Yes, yes, because the Muslims do take the Holy Bible as well. And yeah, so I learned so much from Jihad. He did shake me up and open me up.
He invited you to grow, and apparently you invited him to grow, maybe.
I hope he's doing well. I hope he is. I thought
Lois.
somebody in the Muslim community will know of him. And I'll connect, but nobody has yet been able to connect
Nice.
to that.
Lois, you had a comment.
I did, first of all, I want to echo what Ethan said.
Okay, louder voice for.
I want to echo what Ethan said, that Lynn is such a good example. But what I love about Lynn's story is that, Jihad doesn't know the ripple effect that he had on Lynn's life. And I think that's one thing to remember about evangelism, that you often don't see what the good effect is. But if you have a good heart and you're out there and you're open and you're reaching out to people, that little ripple can go on for years and make huge changes.
Even if you're not going to them specifically talking about Jesus, your example of who you are as a Christian.
Well, building a relationship. He was building a relationship, Lynn and Lynn was building, so that people can understand each other. Instead of you just put them in these little pegs and decide that's who they are. I mean, jihad, I learned a while back, jihad does not mean
A
that.
holy war.
An holy war. And what you said, it's the
Struggle for God.
yeah. But that's just from reading books. It's good to keep reading lots of books.
Any other comments?
It's the newspaper that rearranged the definition of jihad.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the reporting of it, someone decided to call them the jihadists. And I suppose they must have heard at least one or more Muslim persons say that that's what, that was entitled. But they're not even true Muslim, because Muslims are very peaceful people.
Yeah.
And those who attack and hurt and wound and maim and all of that are not following the Quran even a bit. That the gift, I have the gift of experience of a woman who was a nurse, who was very, very faithful Muslim. And my office had a little space, extra space in it, and I kept a rug for her. And took the time every day to pray the number of times that they were supposed to. And her vacation was always Ramadan. That's the only time she ever took time off, and she'd take a month. But she was so faithful and so pleasant and so unassuming. And what I think is the real picture of who Islam is, what Islam is, because if to read it, it's very peaceful thing, and is one of the most important things, that they are kind and that they have compassion. It's one of the five, pillars or something, and it's reporting that screws it up, because they, what now when we hear about the Christian it's the right wing.
Right,
This
in the
is not-
newspapers, it says Christians believe this about government.
Yeah,
Well,
and it's
that's
a
simplified.
generalization that doesn't begin to cover the broad spectrum of Christianity, which is, you can't even lump into one sentence by a long shot, because of the breadth of belief. I have had the occasion to read a book, at least lately, by, okay, I'll think of her name. Well, I can't. The title is Holy Envy.
Barbara Brown Taylor.
Have you read that? It's remarkably good.
Is it Barbara Brown Taylor?
Yeah, Barbara
Yeah.
Brown Taylor. Yeah, thank you.
That was Mary Ann who said it, not me.
Yeah, and it's how to, well, number one, she was struggling with her own Christianity. And she was a Episcopal priest, and she ended up teaching in this small Piedmont college, teaching this world religions, and was a process of her own learning. And so the book is a wonderful thing. And then she comes back to what she knows about Christianity, but also what she knows about faith in general. The big picture, big F for everybody, the faith of everybody. But it's a remark. It's a helpful thing to read, I think, for one person too, because she deals with Buddhism and Judah, Jewish and Islam, and I think one other, and it's
Holy envy.
Holy Envy. Yeah. Well, any of her books are. But because it's her struggle to figure out who she is. All of her books are.
So one big question, I guess, for everybody is that, so we have a much broader understanding of Christianity, which includes LGBTQ community, it includes seeing the good in other faiths. So does that make it harder for us to be evangelical?
Depends on what you think an evangelical is.
Makes it harder to be around my children.
So go on, more on that.
If you think that, as I do, that evangelical, evangelizing
Evangelizing.
is just being and witnessing, then it shouldn't matter who you're with or where you are. I mean, and you don't have to make a big to-do about it. I mean, that's what makes me so crazy about, capital E, even if it's huge to do and kind of beat you with a stick that you're not with them. I just think carry on and show people.
One problem with that though is when you just show people and you're fairly quiet about it, and the biggie evangelicals are very noisy about it, and the newspapers, as Mary pointed out, are quoting all the biggie evangelicals and saying those are Christians, then I found among my friends a lot of people just totally turned off to Christian. People who aren't regular attendees are totally turned off, and I can't talk to them. I can't even talk to them about it. And maybe that's my failure. That's why I'm here to learn. Because it's very hard to even tell them I'm Christian and that you spend Sunday mornings at church. I mean, I have friends who are just astounded by that, and they call me during the service, just to ask me a whatever question on Sunday morning at 10:30, and I don't even know what to say to them. It's just so hard. Lois.
So years ago, I was at a dinner party, and I don't know, I was talking, something came up, and I used Jesus in the scripture. I said, well, we were talking about Jesus, and and this, and if I'd used the F word, nobody would have blinked. But I said Jesus, and you could feel everyone, there were, I don't know, 8 people at the dinner table at someone else's house. You could feel everyone go, like, oh no,
Talk
what
about
kind
tense
of
up.
party is this? And it really, and I've made a point to tell people I go to church. I've made a point to tell people everyone's welcome, because again, the headlines and my own kids don't come to church. When I talk to them, they said, because churches are bigoted. And I'm like, you were raised in this church. Well, you guys are different from everybody else,
That's not what Christianity is.
Yeah, the Christianity is bigoted, is what they think. And so you have to make a point of actually, saying, I'm also an AA, I'm a recovering alcoholic, and I equate the two things. I'm very open about being an AA, because I want people to know about it. And I'm very open about being a Christian, because I want people to know that it's not a place for bigotry. It really is.
My name is Lois, and I'm a Christian.
Yes.
I wanted to get that out there.
Hello, Lois.
Yeah, right. Hello, Lois, welcome. Anyway.
Well,
Mary and the kid.
and the interesting thing is about the progress and the transition of mission and missionaries. From the biggie, from all of the horrible damage that was done in the name of the church and Jesus. And what now is occurring, which is entirely different.
Is it?
With the Episcopal Church, oh yeah, oh absolutely. Now that's, see, you don't even know, that's interesting that.
Well, I know the Adventists are really big in.
No, but I'm
in
talking
Brazil,
about
that good place.
we've got people in mission,
Mm.
the Presbyterian Church has a huge number of people in mission around the world.
Yes.
You get a Presbyterian calendar and you'll find out how many places they are and how many of them have given their life, and they're running schools and hospitals and helping provide for the homeless and for orphans, and I mean, and they've learned to go and not take a message, but find out what's needed, and that the need is then what they seek to follow. And but that's it. I think we should have somebody then from
Maybe we should, we've had the head of the Presbyterian Mission Agency, but maybe we should have people who are engaged in mission
yeah, well,
for the Presbyterian Church.
we've had people come here to speak about it.
We should again.
But I don't know personally anybody that is, but their way is pretty much like, everyone is saying, you know, and if necessary, speak, you know, but it's
Do
being.
good works.
It's
and
the
be there,
being.
presence.
Yeah. Because, and the more you care for others, the more they're interested in who you are. The more you show compassion, the more interested, that comes first. Then you can come to somebody if they are interested, but if you don't initiate, you better find out what I want you to find out.
Otherwise you won't go to heaven.
Yeah, and how to shove, absolutely shove people away, which is, you know, I feel so sorry, I feel so ashamed for what the Christian church did to the Native Americans, to the children, what they did in Hawaii, and the Presbyterian Church was very much part of that. In fact, we were some of the early missionaries from the US.
Dory, could you ask our guest what the feeling is after observing our group, what this has meant to you?
Would you be willing to say something, Naomi?
You talking to Naomi?
Yeah.
I mean, this is like my first time here, so I don't really have anything to say.
Okay, well, we're glad you're here.
Yes.
You never
Thank you
do.
for joining us.
We welcome you to the discussion, but I want to thank everybody because it's now time to go on to our worship service. But I appreciate you being here, and one last word from Lois.
Yeah, I just want to talk about next week. Wear your green. We're going to be talking actually about St. Patrick and how he approached Ireland, one of the few countries in the world that leapt towards Christianity because he was a good listener. We'll be doing some listening exercises, and we'll be wearing green and eating 3-leaf clovers, and we'll be talking about that too. So that's next week.
Yay, come back next week. Hey, thanks, everybody.